Welcome to the Weekly Roar, coming live from the Lion's Den, helping new managers become great leaders and awesome bosses. And now, here's your host, Greg Storch.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Lion's Den. This is the Weekly Roar. Today, I'm continuing my series, How to Raise a Leader. And today, I'm going to talk about something that's crucial for us to do as leaders. You'll find out what that is in just a second. But first, I'm Greg Storch. I'm the founder of Lion Enterprise, a leadership development and coaching business where I focus on creating winning work cultures, one leader at a time. I'm a certified professional leadership coach and a certified leadership speaker and trainer. Just a quick recap. Last week, I spoke about one of the primary responsibilities as a leader, and that's being able to spot other leaders. I called it, It Takes One to Know One. During that episode, I covered the top 5 characteristics I always look for when I'm looking to find other leaders. Hey, if you didn't catch those characteristics, then just head over to my website at lion-enterprise.com and click on the Lion's Pride Library, where you'll find video number 98 for last week. While you're in the Lion's Pride Library, go ahead and check it out. It's a free resource, and it's a great way for you to get more of the roar. All right, now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk about one of the crucial things that we must do as leaders. Now, last week I was discussing ways to help you find the leaders you're looking for, but what happens when you find them? What then? What do you do with them after that? Do you think if you just pay them enough that they'll stick around forever? These are really great questions for leaders to ask of themselves, because I can tell you that it takes a lot more than fair pay in order to care for, cultivate, nurture, and help potential leaders grow. Cultivating potential leaders is going to help us establish a strong foundation that we can continue to build upon. When we let our potential leaders know that we have full faith and confidence in their potential as leaders, it provides them with a sense of security and the motivation to grow. Now, I'm not talking about just mumbling some words of encouragement every now and then. Even though that helps, telling someone they're doing a great job all the time and not doing anything else will start to fall flat on them. It actually takes a little more than that. As leaders who are trying to nurture our potential leaders, we not only have to encourage them, but more importantly, we have to model the behavior we want to see in them. Maybe you're asking what you should be modeling. It's all of those things that I spoke about in my last series. It's things like character and consistency, having the right attitude, valuing others. When we got our start in leadership, we probably found others who had gone before us, and we used them as our own models for our behavior. I know I did. I had a lot of mentors in the Navy, and a few of them really stand out. But there's one in particular who stands out because of the way he modeled the right behaviors as a leader. Commander Jim Fitzpatrick was the department head of the Patient Administration Department at the Navy's largest medical treatment facility, Balboa Naval Hospital in sunny San Diego, California. I was assigned as one of his division officers. Commander Fitzpatrick had been at that hospital for many years. He knew everybody, and everybody knew him. I remember coming into his office early. I always made it a habit to swing by his office to let him know that I had arrived for the day. At that time of the morning, The cleaning crew was usually coming through to make sure everything was ready for the day from the night before. I remember on more than one occasion when the staff would walk in, Commander Fitzpatrick would stop what he was doing and he would speak with the cleaning crew. And he always addressed them by their first name. And as they were taking out his garbage, he would always be sure to say thank you to them. I was still very new to the officer ranks, and I found that to be impressive that he was able to know everyone's name, even the cleaning staff. It's true that you can judge a person's character by the way that they treat people who can do nothing for them. Jim modeled that behavior consistently, and as a young officer, it contributed to the leader that I am today. Now, I'm sure Jim had his role models that shaped him into the leader he was, and then here he was doing the same thing for his leaders as well. I took so many things away from Commander Fitzpatrick, and I placed each one of those things into my leadership toolbox that I carry around with me still today. And that was 18 years ago that I worked with him. It's not always easy to nurture other leaders when you're trying to do the right things yourself, but great leaders recognize that and still find a way to nurture others. When we do that as leaders, people will respond in a positive way and focus on their positive results. Okay, so now that you think you may have found some potential leaders, let's talk about some of the things we'll need to do to prepare ourselves as leaders to start cultivating those potential leaders. Like everything else, we have to start with ourselves. I mentioned before that the cycle of cultivating new leaders is that we must have our own role models first before we can become a role model for someone else. That makes sense, right? Who do you surround yourself with? And who is influencing your behavior? I've talked many times about our inner circle and the importance of choosing who we share our time with. And this is another reason why this is so important. We have to carefully identify our own leadership models. Here are some things you can either think of in terms of finding a role model or to ask yourself regarding the role model you might already have. It's pretty simple. There's really two main things that we have to look into when we're choosing our role models to follow ourselves: character and credibility. Now, from a character perspective, just ask yourself whether or not the person you follow or want to follow in the future, do they have the strength of character? You want to make sure that the people you follow are not flawed, because their flaws can become your flaws. So choose wisely when it comes to the quality of your role model's character. And now when it comes to the credibility piece, you should be looking for role models who others are following as well. That shows some credibility in their leadership. Are others following them, and are they worth following? Now, if there are any questionable areas in either two of these things, character or credibility, then start looking for a different role model, because I can tell you right now that the one you're probably considering is not the right one for you. But if they do pass the character and credibility test, then look deeper at what they have to offer you. Nobody's perfect, but you want to make sure that the person you follow is consistently displaying their strengths. And then the last thing I want to mention is to pick the right model for you. You have to be able to reproduce their strengths for it to have any benefit to you. Once you do, start to develop those strengths in yourself. Now, role models can come from anywhere, right? Maybe they happen to be someone you know personally and have physical access to, or maybe they're just a famous person or an historical figure. It doesn't really matter where they come from as long as they pass the test I just mentioned, but having a personal mentor that you have access to, that's going to serve you best. When you find someone who can personally mentor you, establish a positive mentoring relationship with them. Yes, there are right ways and there are wrong ways to enter and conduct a mentoring relationship. I just want to take a second and deviate from this topic today to talk a little bit about that mentoring relationship. I think many times people who are looking for mentors just identify someone who they see as being successful, and then they ask them to mentor them by just telling them what to do. They're hoping they'll be given the secret sauce, hoping they'll get the same results as their mentors got. But that's not really how a mentoring relationship is supposed to work. First of all, there are certain responsibilities that the mentor and the mentee both have. If you're getting mentored, one of the primary responsibilities is that you've got to prepare for your time with your mentor. Prepare ahead of time by thinking through and having ready thoughtful questions. Write them down so you can be sure to ask your mentor when you meet. The next thing I'd say is before you go back to your mentor for advice, make sure you've taken action on what was discussed previously. Note what worked and what didn't and why. Then develop more growth-related questions for the next session. And be prepared to provide these updates to your mentor. When you finish that session, always ask their permission if you can ask additional questions at that time. The key here is to always be prepared and don't waste your mentor's time. It's not the mentor's job to prepare for the meetings. They're there to advise and guide the mentee, not drive the conversation. Okay, so that was just a little sidetrack about mentoring, because when it comes to finding our own role models, a mentoring relationship is going to be a key factor in your own growth as a leader. We have to get this one right, because what we become from it is the same leader we will grow when we cultivate those potential leaders that we find. So, first thing is to find an appropriate role model. And then the next thing is to start to gain the trust of your followers. More than anything else, followers want to believe in and trust those that they follow. Establishing this trust is key because followers have to buy into the leader first, and they do that when they trust you. It's the single most important factor when we build relationships of any kind, both personal and professional. Once people begin to trust the leader, they can begin to trust in their leadership. But it's our responsibility to develop that trust with our followers, and we do it through our words and our deeds. We do it by actively listening to our followers and giving them the respect they deserve. Or it can be as simple as a word of encouragement or a pat on the back. When you buy into them as a follower, they'll buy into you as their leader. When I first started leading that contract in DC, it took me a long time to establish trust with those teams. And you know what? I don't blame them. There had been 6 program managers in just 15 months before I came and took over. They had no reason to trust that I was going to stay as their new leader. I mean, why would I? The others didn't stay. So, one of the most important things that I did was I showed them through not only my words, but my actions that I was committed to them. After my first year, they finally started to trust that I was truthful when I told them that I wasn't going anywhere, that I was up for these challenges that we faced. And the longer I stayed, the stronger their trust became. So choose your role models wisely for yourself, build trust with your potential leaders. And then another thing is to be as transparent as a bottle of air. Transparency lets your followers know that you're someone that they can not only relate to, but someone that they can learn from. Look, I get it. Nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes, but some people have a harder time admitting their mistakes than others. A good leader understands that they are fallible. When they make mistakes, they see their failures as opportunities to grow and change. This is really an important trait to have because I've said this so many times before that people can't relate to perfection. If they see a leader as being perfect, then what they really see is something they can never hope to achieve. And ironically, it makes you everything but a role model. My operations manager used to push this very thing on the staff. She called it fronting up. In the IT industry, it can be easy to make mistakes, especially in the programming world where one wrong comma or quotation mark and an entire system can be brought down. Whenever we had anyone on the contract make a mistake, she would tell them, front up, which meant admit it and tell the truth. And she built an environment where the employees felt like they could do just that without fear of reprisal. We spent a lot of time working with the staff there to identify problems so we could use those as opportunities to learn and make sure we didn't repeat those past mistakes. Speaking of time, that's another thing that we need to be able to do when we work with potential leaders. We must be givers of our time. We can't truly cultivate potential leaders with hallway meetings and elevator briefs. We need to dedicate time with each one of them. One of the things I used to do was once a month, I would have a leadership lunch for the task managers and other leadership staff. We'd go to the cafeteria downstairs and I'd either buy them lunch or I would order lunch in for everybody. But we would all spend our lunchtime together communicating and connecting with each other. That gave me time with just my leaders, and I got to hear what they were dealing with firsthand. It also gave them time with me where they had my full attention. You know, time is one of our most precious commodities, but we have to be willing to give some of it to our potential leaders when we're trying to cultivate them. Now, this next one I love, but it's something that tends not to happen that frequently. You know, the word cheerleader describes a person who leads the cheer, right? Well, that's exactly what we have to do when we cultivate potential leaders. We have to lead the cheer by providing constant encouragement to them. Think back to a time when somebody gave encouragement to you. Think about how that made you feel, because that's the same feeling that our potential leaders get when they receive encouragement from us. It motivates them and it propels them forward. I know for me personally, when someone does that to me, I feel good. And I have this desire to continue just so I don't feel like I'm letting that person down. the person that showed faith in me and encouraged me to do it. There's so many benefits to taking time to encourage our young leaders. It provides the necessary motivation that they're going to need to reach their potential, and it can give them a needed boost of energy to keep going, even despite making mistakes. Encouragement shows your faith and confidence in their ability to achieve success. It's the positive reinforcement that they need to hear so they can feel appreciated. It also helps us avoid taking them and their work for granted. Small words of encouragement can be the difference between success and failure for them. So, there are 5 things that we should do as leaders if we want to cultivate our new leaders. First, make sure you pick the right role model for yourself. Who models for you is what you model for others. Second, establish trust. People have to believe in you first before they'll follow you. Third thing is to be transparent with them. Look, we all make mistakes. So own yours and front up. Fourth thing is be a giver of your time. Give your time in a way that impacts your new leaders. And the fifth thing is to authentically appreciate and encourage your leaders. Use lots of positive reinforcement with your people to give them the strength they need to hang in there and do their best for us. If you're a parent, then you probably understand the need to nurture when it comes to raising children. Nurturing our children, it instills confidence in them, builds their trust, and encourages them to do their best. And it gives them the best chances of success to bloom wherever they're planted. Well, what isn't necessarily natural for leaders is to take that same perspective and apply it to our roles as leaders when it comes to nurturing potential leaders. But for all the same reasons I just mentioned, it's important to do the same for potential leaders. Without our influence, without taking the time to nurture new leaders, they lose the potential to grow into the leaders that we need them to become. We have to take an active role in their cultivation, and they grow and bloom. Without it, they'll just wither and die on the vine like an unattended grapevine. I love this quote by Robert South, who said, "If there be any truer measure of a man than by what he does, it must be by what he gives." When we nurture the people around us, the potential leaders that we're responsible to cultivate and grow, everybody ends up as a winner. And this is why nurturing our potential leaders is one of the most crucial tasks that we face as leaders. Okay, everybody, there you have it. That is the 4th episode in my new series, How to Raise a Leader. Now, I have a huge surprise for you that I'm so excited to share. Now, next week, I'm celebrating the 100th episode of the Weekly Roar. That's a major milestone for me, and I'm going to host a special panel discussion on the importance of consistency. You're going to hear from authors, coaches, leaders, podcasters as I facilitate the discussion in a special edition of the Weekly Roar. If you want to be in the virtual room, then just come on back to the Lion's Den and tune in to the Weekly Roar next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I hope I'm going to see you there. It's going to be a great event. Thanks everybody for supporting me and watching the Weekly Roar today. You know I appreciate you. All right. I hope you have a great rest of your week. And until we meet again, remember, be powerful, stay poised, just like a lion. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for watching the Weekly Roar live event at lionenterprise.com. If you enjoyed this video, please tell others to join us each week here in the Lion's Den. Thanks again, and see you next week.